Hello guys, welcome to another episode of Ripster daily trade recaps and daily teachings. I'm going to go a little fast today, a lot to cover, so introduction will be quick. Anybody who's new to my videos, new to my recaps on YouTube, all these trade recaps and all these teachings are either from YouTube, previous videos, anything I share on X, or mostly that what I talk about in my community. We trade a repeatable system, the repeatable system that thousands of traders across the world use to trade consistently. We trade a repeatable setups. System is how you trade, setup is what you trade. Our setups are repeatable, that trigger on a same repetition of same parameters and the same patterns, technical patterns. So we use these repeatable system and repeatable setups. So you always need your investing and trading to be repeatable so that you can make money in the market with the least amount of risk. Every morning we have a game plan. This was a game plan for today. You see a bunch of news, a lot of news that we have. Then we have earning plays, market plays. These are the greens are the market plays. Then we have upgrades and downgrades. I talked about upgrades and downgrades in yesterday's video. You can go look there how to trade those. Then we also have day 2, day 3 setups. This is one of my repeatable strategy. I will cover a bunch of our day 2, day 3 setups today in the community. UPST, ROKU, SMCI, all these were our day 2 setups. It's a repeatable strategy. You must learn this. I did a free webinar on it as well. In addition to that, I also have we also provide daily levels to trade SPY, QQQ, and Netflix, Amazon, Meta, Tesla, all these names. And we also provide crypto levels. I often share these levels on Twitter as well. So we have a game plan every morning. Then I'm in my community. I'm on the voice first few hours of the market open. I'm usually on the voice more if needed, and I guide the community all day. We have thousands of traders on our community trading floor, sharing ideas all day. A lot of great ideas. We have news bars, scanners, audio alerts, one-stop shop for any active trader. So I'm on the voice, and I will show you my timestamp guidance, which I post in my alerts feed. We are not an alert service. We are a community trying to work together, learn the repeatable system, and trade consistently. So I'm going to cover most of the plays from our game plan and our daily plan, and we'll go through, look at our losers, look at our winners, how we traded, and hopefully you guys can learn and implement that in your trading. Let's start. All right, we're going to start with Meta, the big play here on Meta, and we will talk about Amazon as well a little bit here, or maybe 1 second here. Yeah. So what was happening today? This morning, SPY QQQ was bearish at the open. Nothing much going on SPY QQQ today. It was initially bearish. It was choppy, failed breakouts. So nothing much was going on in this S&P and QQQ until later in the day or end of the day. But the stocks like Meta and Amazon were showing strength right in the open. They were showing the relative strength. Meta was a lot of flow. This is important that you watch the flow, you learn the flow, we continuously track the flow all day long, trying to find the opportunities, because the flow can sometimes tell us how much interest the market has. And today there was a lot of flow in Meta in the morning. That's why I talked that Meta and Amazon are strong. I mentioned it in the community. If you look at the levels, let's see here. If you look at the Meta levels, so Meta was pushing over 595, 596, 600. So those were the two levels where the Meta was pushing over. If you watch my previous videos, I discussed that Meta has been strong since Zuckerberg met Trump in Florida. So there was a catalyst, right? Let me show you my tweet on that. Let's see if I can find that tweet here. So Zuckerberg met Trump, solid strength. Zuckerberg wants to play a key role in the tech policy, and it's expected that next administration would be friendly to Meta, right? So all this, that's why there's a lot of flow, a lot of strength. I did mention that Meta was the strongest name in the market, and that's why I kept mentioning on the voice as well to the community that it's a good long, you can long it. But the real trade on Meta came later in the day when we broke out of 600. Why was that? Why was Meta good trade? Look at this daily chart. I always tell traders and investors to make sure you look at your daily chart. What is this? This is a repeatable all-time high breakout, consolidation breakout setup. Always an A plus setup, always pays well. So you have the consolidation breakout, you have the option flow, you have the catalyst. Everything is telling you it's an A plus. Yes, market was a little weak, little choppy. In that case, sometimes, we are a little cautious. But the strength on Meta was just amazing, right? It traded 127% of its volume today. It traded 157% of its average range. So everything told us that Meta is strong. That's when I told everybody 600 breakout, hold it, hold it, long it. I was right on the voice when we started to break out over that 600 level. And as soon as I said that, I said that right when we were breaking out, and we pushed right away to 602, 603, 604. Right, so you see, in 5 minutes we pushed towards our 6:0 target, right? And in just quickly in this first 5-10 minutes, we pushed from 600 all the way to 606, and then we pushed to 608, right? So that was the first trade, right? The first long trade. Then I told everyone that watch the 512 pullbacks, watch the curls. That's where you add, that's where you roll, right? See, you see here I mentioned that roll with the profits. It's a daily breakout. I specifically mentioned daily breakout because it's such a big breakout, you roll it. The Amazon and Meta are the best longs for you guys for whole day. So anyways, Meta, nice breakout. I was talking about Meta in the on the trading floor all day as well. That we were looking for 608 initially, right? We were looking for 608. That's what our target was, 608. Once 608 broke out, next target was 610. And I told traders you can roll to 615 options, you can even do 620 lotos, and I even told them to swing it, and the swing is actually up nicely. It's hitting 617 in after hours. So this was our Meta trade. These 610 options went 100%, 605 options went 200%, 150%, and that's how you make profits, is when you hold your trade all day long. You do not panic. Yes, that's a pullback, but you see this level, right? You see this level. It's not breaking down. This is not breaking down. You get back in this zone as long as it holds, and there was this another flag here, you stay in. And that was my continuous teaching to the community today, that it's an A plus setup, and you can see my tweets about it. And I did share this. I shared a lot of tweets actually on Meta today to show the traders on my Twitter followers why it's an A plus long. You can see that when I shared it was at 608 and now it's at 617. It's an A plus long. Look at a bigger picture. Do not zone into your 1 minute, 5-minute charts. Right, breakout holds, we see the next leg up. So such a confident A plus setup. If you know the repeatable setups, traders literally in the community made many days worth of their profits, right? This was the strength. If you take the morning levels to long Meta, when I was mentioning earlier at 645, you see this 596 pivot I gave, then 600. So from those pivots, 596, 600, we hit $15 per share profit. Even if you're trading shares, you can buy at 600, your stops at 598 or under that, you risk $3 and you're making $10, $12, $15. That's a huge risk to reward trade. So this was the reasoning, guys. Hopefully you guys could learn from our Meta trade, pre-market guidance, explained why it's an A plus trade. No BS, no hindsight. You guys need to focus on such setups when there's a catalyst, there's option flow, and there is a technical setup, which is all-time high consolidation breakout. Let's go to the next one. All right, let's talk about Amazon today. So Amazon was again super strong, but not as strong as Meta, because Amazon was you see that it pulled back, right? Initial long on Amazon, 213 was the first target. It pulled back 3450. When 512s and 3450 are so close, it's up to you. You can either hold to 3450 or you can re-add the reclaim of 512s right here. And Amazon then continued to push towards 214. We were looking for 215. We never got it. But regardless, it was a good long trade today, good long setup. Low volume, but still it was a decent. There was a reason I said Amazon and Meta are very strong. Even Apple was very strong today. I personally did not focus on that. But you could see that Apple was breaking out of this opening range. And if you see our levels on Apple, we were breaking breaking out those levels as well. Apple also had a news today, 15% year-over-year increase, store revenue increase, right? So there's a news, there's a catalyst. And what was the plan on Apple? The plan on Apple was, you can read that right here, what I gave in the pre-market. Bullish bias to long as 239 holds. So you see it pulls to 239. Exactly, that's where it bounced. It pulls back to 239, exactly where it bounced, and you can see that how it rallied all day long towards 243s, right? So all you had to do was follow my pre-market planning, and you could trade on your own. Nothing needed. So let's go to the next one. So next one we're going to discuss is Tesla. So Tesla was on our game plan this morning. You can see that neutral bias no long under 353, right? So that was the plan. So when Tesla, started to push at the open, I gave a long. We were long, but Tesla versus 350, but it broke 512s and broke 3450. That's where you cut it, take a loss, move on. It did give some short scalps, but you can see all day this was the level. If you were short and you were shorting at this level, that's completely wrong. You're going to lose money. You short the bounces into the MTF clouds, but even then Tesla was not worth it. After my initial loss on the long, I told everybody, leave it alone. It's a waste of time. It's not doing anything. So Tesla did not really, there was a buy at 348, 349. It was bouncing from there. Yes, you could scalp it, but it was not worth the time, and it was better to avoid it after the morning push and fail. Let's go to the next. All right, now we're going to discuss a bunch of our day 2, day 3 setups. Let's start with TTD. So let's see what TTD was doing. Let's look at TTD. Here you go. So TTD was a textbook day 2 setup. TTD textbook day 2 setup. It was one of our top day 2s. You see that it was right here, 135, 136 resistance, 135 support. As soon as you see that it's reclaiming 135, you get long, your stops under the clouds or low of this candle, and once it breaks over yesterday's highs, you stay long, pullback, little pullback, but there's also a support here, so you need to respect the support. 512 reclaims, push all day. So TTD, simple, repeatable day 2 setups. That's why I have it on my top watch list. That's why we have your support and resistance systems. Watch my previous videos. When the day 2 stock, which ran a cloud yesterday, holds the clouds and breaks over the yesterday highs, it is a confirmed long. Not only that, do not forget the daily charts. TTD was all-time high breakout over this daily flag. Look at this breakout. Do not ignore that. That's why it was an A+ long setup, just how Meta was. TTD was amazing trade today in the community. Let's look at the next long setup. Next long setup was ROKU. So ROKU was a nice long for us in the day 2s, but it failed. So day 2 failed, so that we had to take a loss because it broke under 512s and 3450s. And I gave the day 2 long, and then I told everybody cut the longs under 3450. And I did mention on the voice that you can short it, and then it did fade. Since we cut it, look where we are cutting it, right? We're cutting everything right here. Cut it under 3050, we cut here and right here, and then it faded another $2 from there. So you could easily short scalp here. Why is it bouncing from here? Because 74 is the support, and that was my target on 74. So yeah, so that was it. ROKU, the difference between ROKU and TTD was the chart. And TTD also had really nice catalyst, right? They're buying a TV, they're making their own TV operating system. Important thing to note here is ROKU basically failed to push over the yesterday's highs. So this was a failed breakout, and the breakout also came at 10 a.m. So after 10 a.m. there was no trend. So ROKU was a failed long, good short scalp. You can see my guidance here. We make sure our losers are not big. We try to keep it tight based upon our system. So make sure you read this, review this, and TTD as a long setups. All right, let's look at UPST. So UPST was, and all these trades, I use the same repeatable system, Ripster Clouds, Ripster MTF Clouds, right? All that. So what was UPST doing? It's important to understand that UPST was basically pulling back to, if I go to the daily chart, it was pulling back to the daily 20 EMAs. Remember, daily 20 EMA is a very important level for buyers and investors and ever short sell traders, because if it stays over daily 20 EMA, it can bounce. So that's my Ripster Ripster MTF 2021 Cloud. So UPST was actually, if I show you here, let me see if I can find it here and show you what UPST was doing. You can see my timestamp guidance. I told everybody to long versus 68, long versus 68, and you can see that MTF Cloud is always our first target. 72 was my target actually, but pulled back. You lock your profits, that's fine. You get out, but you can always get back in at 34.50 bounce. And you can see that it gave you another setup end of the day, and then I sent an alert on the MTF breakout, and then UPST continues to push towards 74, towards 74.23. So it was all day long setup. Yes, it pulls back, but it never broke the MTFs. It never broke the 34.50s. Sometimes you will have these candles. You have, not every time a stock will run like Apple, right? So Apple was easy, right? Never broke and just kept on going. But UPST did give this choppiness, but that is fine. You have to be a little flexible with your stops. If you only traded the first long, that's good. We made a couple of bucks there, that's fine. But then if you're holding the runners, you can hold your runners until we get this breakout, and that was the breakout that came later in the day, and then of course MTF breakout, and then it was a good one, right? So see what I was saying, right? So I was saying that end of the day I told everybody to exit it because we broke this 512s. All right, let's look at SMCI. So SMCI, the long was kind of a failure, but we knew that because, when I gave SMCI long to everyone, I told them that, 46 is a big seller, stay small until 46. So that's why we were small, because there was a big 300,000 seller. I even tweeted about it. As soon as that seller gave up, I told everybody, stop out right at this area, do not hold it. It broke. I said, short it. Now you short it. And even when I mentioned the short, it faded from 43 to our MTF targets, right? That was a nice short scale. A lot of traders did really good on that SMCI short as well in the community. But here you want to understand that it was a day to setup, but again, it could never push over the pre-market highs. It's pretty easy, pretty simple, and pretty clear why it could not, why it failed. 300,000 seller, failed breakout. This will happen, but what you can't do is just hold your longs, hold. You cannot do that. You cut it and you short it and you make your money back. A lot of traders make their money back who were long and who lost on the long side, and then they got the short side and they made money on the short side, right? And it really never bounced. See, it's under 34.50. It's bearish. This was a failed curl. 512s fail all day. It's back at the MTF Cloud. So you can see that how system is telling you that it's a no long after this. The curls was, if I was taking a call at MTF Cloud, would have been much better. But you see, there's not much distance, right? You can give more room to your short to the 3450 clouds, and it never went there, and then it faded, right? So yeah, so SMCI day to long was loser, but short was a winner. So hopefully you understand that. You understand these day to day 3 repeatable setups, very consistent. All right, so let's look at CRDO. So CRDO was amazing guidance on the floor by RGV. The reason CRDO was on our game plan. Let's look at our game plan. Our game plan was gap fill under 61, 60, long over it. When it did not break 60 and it started to push over the pre-market highs, that's when it gave me a long. That's what I told everyone. Watch the cloud long, watch pullbacks. Pushed nicely towards 70, came back, did not really completely break down because there's a resistance becomes support, and then it flagged. I was on the voice, I said it's curling on the 512, and then it becomes another 512 curl and goes to 72, 30 bucks. So from my long mention in the morning, you don't even need to watch my long mentions, just watch the levels. 6150, 64 breakout. You just have to watch those levels, and once it's pushed over 6040, you have to take it long, right? You can always take the first profits in the 10 a.m. push, and you hold runners and you add back here and you make a nice little profit. So CRDO was a nice game plan trade. So next we're going to take a look at is LLY. So LLY was not really on my game plan. It is our existing swing. We are swinging it from 7-10 bucks. It's going nicely. I expect it to go higher. But once somebody mentioned on the floor, and I saw the psychological level breakout, because even on the daily chart, it was a nice little breakout here. Say I said LLY 800 breakout long. So that was a setup. LLY was the 800 breakout long. right here. And from that 800 breakout, our target was 815. We met over 15. Nothing crazy, just just a scalp there. But you see, it never broke. It never broke. I did say log some here when it was pulling back. It never broke 512s and then continued to run back. But the main trade was this opening 800 breakout on Lily, and just a scalp trade was a good trade in the community. So there was a news about Korea, South Korea going on today, and there was few tickers that we were watching on that. I didn't put it in the game plan, but our news bot was on, and it was telling us about the news coming in, and that's when I saw the EWY. This was our news bot, South Korea ETF. I told everybody to short the pops, and that one, since I mentioned it, it faded from 54, 53.90s, and it faded all the way to 50.68. Just one buck. I think the options kind of moved a little bit there on EWY. A lot of traders shorted it. And then once it reclaimed 512s, I told everybody to get out and did give a good long. This is very news-based stock. A lot of news was coming out of South Korea, right? So that was good. Brian did good on 53 puts. So that was good. It's not very liquid, but you can always trade these opportunities. You have to watch for these opportunities. CPNG was another one. I didn't trade it, but I mentioned the community that was also failing on that. But whenever there's such kind of geopolitical news, you find those tickers, see if it's a good entry versus cloud, make use of the opportunity and make some scalp money. So EW was good, not bad. All right, let's look at some other names. Snow again was a call out on the trading floor. Somebody mentioned to me that Snow is looking strong, and Snow was our MTF long, right? So Snow was our MTF long. So you can see here how strong Snow was. I said, watch the MTF long, and then it breaks MTF. That's it. It was going all day running, push, pull back to the clouds, no problem. MTF push, pull back to the MTF clouds and push all day long. So that was a beautiful long trade, easy MTF cloud setup on. So I just want to recap. One of the other setups we had was on AFRM, right? So trade versus 1 hour AMTF trades, right? So trade versus 1 hour MTF. So I was not focused personally on AFRM, but it was a very simple setup, right? Look what I said in the community, AFRM, trade versus 1 hour MTF. And you always focus on these cult names, these big runners. They always provide opportunity because they have such a big range. So a firm was a simple trade. As soon as you see it pushing over the clouds, you take a long starter, you add in if it's holding up, you add in, and a firm was straight up towards 72, right? It was simple, easy trade, right? But you have to be in the first 10-15 minutes to trade that breakout, or the MTF breakout, because if you're adding here, that's of course you're going to lose money. This is not where you add, right? Your ad should be right somewhere here, right here, opening trade, or maybe this candle. You can go to 3-minute chart and see what's going on. If you add here, then your lows is on the 10-minute candle lows. All right, so next one we're going to look at is COIN and MSTR. Both were longs in the morning. Both were the cloud push. MSTR was this 512 cloud push, and COIN was another MTF cloud push, right? So those were simple. You look at the levels I'm giving you: 300 and 370, 50, 377. COIN is you take the long over 300. MSTR, you take the long once it pushes over the clouds and you trade it, right? So that's simple. Base hits, right? Repeatable setups that I show you every day. And you don't have to trade everything. You just have to trade what you like. You just have to trade what you like, and just focus on 1, 2, 3 tickers. I guide through the all tickers. I personally only trade a few, but I have to guide my community because everybody's trading something else, and everybody is has their own focus, your own setup. Learn from it, see what setups work for you, then you trade those, right? You can see that MSTR was my guidance when it started the moving 512 curves. COIN was my guidance as well. So it was a good easy trade. So let's look at Zscaler. So Zscaler, personally, I did not mess with it because reason being, there's MTF clouds here, MTF clouds there. It was MTF to MTF trade because I wanted a bigger range. I knew if I long here, what if it rejects here and comes back? So that was my thought process on Zscaler, right? So I said no long under 193, only long 512 curls, check MTF clouds, neutral bias, right? So it curled 512s and it pushed. So a lot of traders did long it. I'm very happy and proud with the way they longed it. But I just wanted to share my thought process. You can see that it was not a short. You could short it here. This was a long, but you would have to watch your entries closer to the clouds and make some of these scalp moves. I do not like these kind of wiki candles. So it was all right. Nothing special on the scaler. That's why I avoided it. Let's quickly look at some of the other players from the game plan. There's so much going on today. There was a TMDX. I said bearish to neutral, only long if 512 curls, short under 78, long over 80, and it broke the 78. It could not get over the 78, and it was a short all day. And you could see how bearish the chart is. The daily chart broke a big level. It's a very bearish chart. You do not want to long it. Once you see this daily breakdowns, you know it's a short. So understand that TMDX daily levels are breaking down. There are a few other plays which were moving from game plan. CNM was one, which was earning setup bullish to neutral, vote 512, resistance 53, support 5150. Once you see that it's holding 53, I mean, you can long it, just ride the clouds up. It was a decent game plan trade. All right, I want to talk about this penny stock. If you do not know these low floors, there's you can watch my free guidance on this. Go to my community, you can watch that. You can also watch the webinars on the low floor setups in the community. So PRP, it was just a scalp, but it turned out to be a nice trade. You see that when I was talking about PSQH, I'll just show you here, right? So once I saw this curl, so that was a 3450 repeatable curl setup. It has a Trump news, so that makes it like more of a catalyst play. So Trump news, so I said I'm scalping the 512 and watch the 512 pullback. I mentioned at 3:30 that I'm still in the 512 curls. It can push in the after hours, and that's what it did, right? And it pushed in after hours to 870. So PSQH from $6 all the way to 870, or you added $5. Your risk is 450. If you add here, then your stops have to be at 4. If you are chasing, add small, or you wait for these 512 calls. You let this pull back to this 512. You add here, add in the breakout, and trade it long. So PSQH was a nice low flow trade in the community. There's another after hour trade. If you do not trade after hours, watch my teachings on how to trade after hours. I do have a webinar on trading after hours. So CRM was basically in the community as soon as I saw the news, as soon as I saw it pushing over the MTF clouds 1 hour, and I saw that it's holding a lot of strength. That's when I told everybody, long MTF clouds. So that's what I said to everybody, long MTF clouds. Your risk is, of course, this 336 area or 332 area. So from the 342s, pushed towards the 345 first target I gave, and 350 was my second target. You can see at 404 I gave these two targets, and by 420, 430, 330s we met our targets. After our trades, small size, even if you are trading 100 shares, your risk is $400-$500, but you're making $1,000-$1,200, and that's good risk reward for after hour trading. You never size crazy. Anyways, we'll see how CRM does tomorrow. If it breaks out of 350, we will long it. If not, we will avoid it. All right, guys, that's it for today. Take care. Bye-bye.